Hello, everyone. Wow, what a group today, huh? I'm Angie Mar. I'm the chef proprietor of Restaurant La Bee in Greenwich Village, the founder of Mar Hospitality Group, and author of the cookbook Butcher and Beast. It's so nice to be back on the Jubilee stage today. So I can't believe this is the 12th in-person Jubilee. I've done a couple of these, and it's always so lovely to be here with all of you. As a proud independent restaurant owner, I'm honored to introduce the Beyond the Pass panel presented by Chase and the Independent Restaurant Coalition. I can't help but think about my trailblazing aunt, Ruby Chow, who owned a groundbreaking restaurant and supper club in Seattle, and she was a huge influence on me, and how she might have benefited from having the Independent Restaurant Coalition back in the day. I know that this is a room full of people who love independent restaurants, and as you know, they need your support more than ever. The IRC members you are about to hear from are working hard on behalf of us all, making sure that your favorite neighborhood restaurants, which are the lifeblood of our communities, have a champion across the country and in Washington, D.C. So let's welcome our panel, and please hold your applause. I know it's a very exciting one. Our panelists are Caroline Styne of the Luke Hospitality Group in Los Angeles, Sarah Grueneberg of Monteverde in Chicago, Stella Denning of Day Trip Counter in Oakland, and Cheetie Kumar of Aja in Raleigh. Our moderator is a woman that I find to be so inspirational, a true force, and somebody that I'm very proud to call my dear friend, Cherry Bombe's Kerry Diamond. I hope you have a wonderful Jubilee Day, everyone.
Hi, everybody. That wasn't long, I'm back. Okay. I have always said that restaurants are small miracles. Unless you work in one, you have no idea what goes into making them run, let alone be successful. The money, time, manpower, or woman power it takes is astounding, just within the walls of the space. But there's a lot that goes on outside the walls of a restaurant, and that's where the IRC comes in. Independent restaurants are subject to an enormous amount of regulation, and they didn't have anyone fighting for them until the IRC was formed. The IRC was founded on the belief that small businesses have the power to affect legislative change if we unite our voices. They're tackling such issues as the child care crisis for restaurants, they're advocating for a farm bill that creates food systems that benefit everyone, and working on issues related to service charges and tipping. As a former restaurant and coffee shop owner, I can tell you I didn't have time to be lobbying my city, state, or federal government. I was busy finding someone to fill in for the sick barista or deal with the surprise health inspection. It's always a surprise health inspection. If you know, you know. Or figuring out the latest restaurant software. I know lots of you can relate. I wish the IRC had been around when I had my restaurants, but I'm glad they're here today and working as a lifeline for independent restaurants across the country. Before we talk about the IRC, I'd like for us to get to know the women on stage and learn a little bit about them and their businesses. We're going to start with Caroline Styne. Caroline, thank you for being here all the way from Los Angeles. It means a lot.
I feel so lucky to be here.
Oh.
I keep 1,000 women. Right. Sorry.
We have more allies in the room than usual, so thank you. Thank you to all the allies in the room. Caroline, tell us about your restaurant group.
Yeah, I have a restaurant group with my business partner, Chef Suzanne Goen.
Woo!
She's great. We opened our first restaurant in 1998. It was called Luke, like the olive. And since then, we have opened 2 AOC restaurants, small plate, served family style. And I hate to say this, but I think we came up with that concept, so I'm so sorry if anybody's ever we have opened other restaurants that unfortunately are not open anymore. We had a group of restaurants called The Larder, which were little cafes. We had a catering company that was very successful until the pandemic, and then we decided that building that back with one chef and one manager left was just going to be a little bit too much for us to handle, and we actually hated catering anyway. And then we have a wholesale bread and pastry baking business called Larder Baking Company, and we sell products to hotels and restaurants. If anyone wants to talk to me, I'm available nationwide. And then we also operate the food and wine operations at the Hollywood Bowl in California, which is an outdoor concert venue with multiple restaurants and marketplaces and food options. So that is what we do now.
Amazing. And I just want to say, on behalf of all of us, Los Angeles has been through a lot. And it's amazing if you've been, I mean, I know you all know what's been going on for years, starting with the pandemic up to the fires. The chefs in the restaurant community in LA are always the first to respond to anything. They're the first affected, whether by natural disasters or economic downturns, and they are the first to respond. So I know you and Suzanne jump in on everything, and I just want to thank you on behalf of all of us for everything you do.
I think all restaurateurs do that.
Yeah.
It's a nationwide thing. I think hospitality people, that's our nature. So. I actually, one more thing, I think one of the things I'm the most proud of is to have been one of the founding members of the IRC.
Yes, yes, I wanted to mention that. And we have 2 board members here with us also, Cheetie and Stella are board members. Sarah, Monteverde is one of the shining stars on the Chicago restaurant scene. I have never seen a restaurant so packed at lunchtime. Astounding. Tell us how you became a chef and what led to the opening of Monteverde.
Thank you. It's really an honor to be here. And I think about this question, how does one become a chef? And I think you start by being obsessive with food and a love of cooking. But there's a real jump that happens as a line cook or a prep cook to a chef. And for me, it became clear when I thought about other people besides myself. And I thought about the team under me, the guests, all of the experience that your team has working in your environments, what the guests experience. It's a real kind of, I think, magic formula that you have to take into consideration, because the people that are in the space is what brings the soul that you can't buy in a chair or in decor of a restaurant. And what led me to opening Monteverde, you know, I worked for a big group, and I finally decided that it wasn't the right move and I had to say no to opening a restaurant with them. And it was really hard, and it was a really hard decision to make, to decide to go on my own. But I found a partner and a best friend, and her and I got investors, and we started Monteverde in 2015, and it will be 10 this November.
Wow,
and
congratulations.
Thank you. I'm so glad that I'm able to lead and be the leader of our business, and it takes a lot from being a chef to a business owner, and that's what the IRC does, is it helps us feel confidence that we have support.
10 is such a milestone. Anyone who owns or works in a restaurant knows that. I should have asked you this beforehand, but can you tell folks the news that you told me on the phone? Is that public news? Pretend you didn't hear that part.
Well, we have 2 big pieces of news. We have a new executive chef, Bailey Sullivan, who's on this season of Top Chef. She is absolutely amazing. And we just purchased a building for our 2nd restaurant through the SBA loan program, and it's becoming, it's really, I think, the game changer for restaurateurs to try to have a piece of the property and have that asset. And so it's very exciting. Thank you.
That's remarkable.
I can't say anything else.
Thank you for sharing that, and congratulations. I'm Cheetie, my friend Cheetie. It's so good to see you. Before you were a chef and restaurateur, you, no surprise, were in an indie rock band for a long time. You're like our first indie rock star on stage. I'm very excited. How did music lead to the kitchen?
First of all, I'm just so thrilled to be here. I've always wanted to come to Jubilee. This is amazing. So yeah, I, of course, became a musician through the back door, like in becoming a chef, and we were road dogs. We toured so much, and I grew up cooking. It was like my mom's love language. When she couldn't express anything else, she did it through food, and she taught me so much about the fundamentals of Indian cooking, but also just like thoughtful and intentional, expressions of love. And when we were touring, if anybody's ever been in a band, food is such a scarce thing. You know, and I was in a band with 5 guys usually, maybe 6. And, you know, fast food was the thing. Like, nobody really cared, but I cared so much. And what I read was cookbooks and food magazines. And so I was always kind of like obsessed with food when we were on the road. And, you know, we weren't really making enough money to live, so I worked at restaurants. I was cooking first, and then I was bartending, because that's where the money was. But once we toured in Europe, I realized that the thing that made me feel more human than I did in America as a touring musician was the food. Promoters really took care of us, and the food culture in Europe was such an important part of everybody's day. And it wasn't treated like we never had promoter pasta, which is a thing. Like, we don't want promoter pasta. We had real food, and I just realized like hospitality and music and food are all so intertwined. So we opened a rock venue. We opened an indie rock club in Raleigh, and that was our first brick and mortar, but attached to it was a restaurant space. And you know, I did catering, and I always cooked, and I always had big dinner parties, like ridiculously big dinner parties, and everybody said, "Oh, you should have a restaurant." And I was too stupid to understand how hard that was. But the music venue came first, and I, you know, really wanted touring bands to come through and think of Raleigh as a space where they got taken care of. And I always had really good food backstage, and I would look at their itineraries and, you know, look at their riders and say, "Oh, these are vegans from Brooklyn," or "These are, you know, Midwestern guys, and they're going to have meat." I don't know, it's just those little things that make you feel like you can exhale, and you can feel like you can have your best show of the tour. And that was such an important part of what we did. And then the restaurant came later and kicked my ass.
Tell folks a little bit about Aja. I had the pleasure of eating at Cheetie's new restaurant, and one of your gifts, among the many gifts that you have, Cheetie, is that you managed to create these spaces where if you go as an outsider, you want to move there. Like, I was sitting at the bar eating, and Cheetie and her husband Paul were so welcoming, and it was just such a great vibe there. I was thinking, maybe I want to move to Raleigh.
Well, I transplanted to Raleigh from India to the Bronx to Amherst, and then I went to Raleigh, and I thought, this feels like home. And the farmers market was a big part of it, and just the welcoming community. I mean, we don't have any like good tourist attractions or anything. It's really just about the people. And Paul, my husband and partner, he's the vibe director. You know? He's just like a maximalist in his decor. He like balances fake and real plants, and you know, he just is genuinely a good-hearted, welcoming human. And we don't have that much in Raleigh, and I think, you know, it's just fun for us to create a space that feels good. And Aja is turning 2 in January. Before that, we had Garland. That was 9 when we decided to close, which was attached to the music venue. But it's a new era. I'm really excited about it.
Well, tell Paul I said hi, and I hope he puts Vibe Director on his LinkedIn. I think it's on his card. Stella, I'm so happy you're here today. This is the first time I'm meeting Stella. You and your husband Finn will be opening Day Trip Counter in Oakland. I know there are a lot of folks here from that area and who love Oakland. Day Trip Counter is based on your previous restaurant, Day Trip. You had an interesting path to restaurateur that included, if I got this right, a dessert tricycle in Berlin. Am I correct with that? Okay, you have to start there. How did that lead to what you're doing today?
I did. I had that. Also, stupidly, I had it only in the winter because I had a seasonal job at the time that was only in the summer. So I was trekking up hills and across the city in the dead of winter in the snow. Not fun. Gave me some of that grit that I needed later for the restaurant, though. My co-owner and husband, Finn.
Finn, where are you? Give us a wave, Finn. Thank you for being here.
We met, kind of connected over food and community, and opened Day Trip, a fermentation-driven party restaurant. Also small plates, so could not be here without this, so thank you. And we had that for 3 years. It closed in December, and it happened alongside us having a baby. We had a baby 8 months ago, and that was a big part of our transition to Day Trip Counter for many reasons. But we realized that the restaurant industry for small independent restaurants really was not serving us at so many levels. And we opened Day Trip really with our values first and trying to put that forward at every stage. And it didn't work. And we decided to reinvent and have Day Trip Counter, or about to open Day Trip Counter in the next month with, it's gonna be counter service, it's rotisserie chicken concept, and we are really trying to look at it give from a more creative standpoint in some ways. Cheetie and I were talking about this before the panel, but needing to operate within boundaries can often lend itself to more creativity, but we just realized in the landscape of Oakland and the landscape of small independent restaurants, it wasn't possible to run what Day Trip was anymore. So.
You said something so interesting that you were doing it values first, and I think that's something a lot of people in this room think about regardless of what business they're in. Can you give folks more advice about that? Because you don't want to give up on that.
Definitely, and that, I'm glad you're saying that, because we're not closing the chapter on our values as we open Day Trip Counter. Actually, part of the reason why we're pivoting to Day Trip Counter is because we realize that we have to pivot to maintain our values, and we opened Day Trip with a certain labor model. We had a 20% service charge tacked on. We had we did so many things in terms of how we treated our team, how we communicated with them, had transparent financials, transparent pay. At so many different levels, we were trying to do things differently. All of that will stay the same in Day Trip Counter, but the amount of labor that went into what we did to uphold those values wasn't working. The bottom line wasn't working. And so we had to get really creative to think about how can we restructure things so that we can hold on to those values, because those values are the lifeblood of the future of small independent restaurants.
Yeah, absolutely. Caroline, you, like we said, were one of the founding members of IRC. Can you tell us a little bit about how and when the IRC was founded and what drew you to that organization?
Yeah, so March 13th, actually my birthday, is when the day in LA when restaurants shut down. My business partner and I were into panic mode, like, oh, we're supposed to lay people off? How do you lay people off? How you suddenly become an instant professional in how to put people out of work and, you know, close your doors for an unknown amount of time. We were all panicking. And about, 2 days later, I got a call, I think it was from Paul Kahn, and he said, hey, a group of restaurateurs from around the country are getting on a Zoom meeting. We've had a couple of them. It would be great to have you guys out from LA in on this Zoom, because we're all just trying to figure out how to navigate this. And I was like, hallelujah, please sign me up, because we felt so alone. And I think, in the past, in the restaurant world, we were all very competitive and secretive, and everything looks the way it looks on the surface. We're very good at creating an illusion for the public and for each other. And getting on these calls every morning, well, 6 a.m. for me, sadly. I was sitting up in bed during all these calls. Every morning and every afternoon, it was not only a how are we going to get through this, but also a little bit of a therapy confessional for everybody who was on there saying, yeah, we all have these very thin margins. We all have this completely messed up financial structure. It would be great to address all that too, but how are we going to get our doors open? And I have to say, it was so incredible to be on this screen every morning with all these people going through the same thing, trying to navigate this, but it also pushed me and pushed all of us to do something we'd never done before, or at least most of us had never done, which was reaching out to our Congress people and senators and making cold calls to politicians and bankers and other resources to figure out how we could save our industry, and coming up with crazy ideas like maybe we can get a grant program put together and the government will give us all money, and we actually made that happen. It was like, wow, we could actually, it's like Fantasy Island. I felt so accomplished. I felt so connected to all these people from around the country, and it opened my eyes up to the fact that we're all, this whole independent restaurant community, is all sort of in this boat together, no matter if you're in crazy packed, you know, booked up New York or in California during the fires when everyone's staying home. We're all in this, you know, same boat. And it was a really remarkable time. As painful as those 6 a.m. phone calls were, it was incredible. And of course, we still are keeping that going.
Yeah. Cheetie, you had, when we were talking earlier, you had mentioned you had always been politically aware, but not necessarily politically active. What made you want to get involved, but not just get involved, but be a board member?
Yeah, I actually did, the James Reeder Foundation has this program called Boot Camp, and it's advocacy training, and I did that in 2018. And it's called Boot Camp for a reason. It's very intense, and we talked a lot about the Farm Bill. And I was just like, what? I mean, I'm never gonna, like, this is cool. I'm very excited to know all this stuff, but I'm never talking to a senator. I'm not the kind of person that is gonna be in an elevator with Tom Tillis and, you know, that's not gonna happen. Well, 2020 happened and the IRC had been meeting for a couple of weeks, and my friend Ashley Christensen invited me to come to a meeting. And, you know, in that desperate time where it was like, we're literally, who knows what's going to happen, we may not exist, our business is going to fold, we've laid off all of our people individually, one by one on the phone, and this was a moment of feeling a little less helpless, and that was very empowering. And then, you know, we're chefs, so we make a prep list, and we broke it down, like, okay, I'm gonna get a list together of everybody in Central North Carolina, I'm gonna, you know, county commissioners and state legislators and federal, and we just started making these calls, and, you know, every day there was like another action plan, and it just kind of kept going. And yeah, so we're inventing meal kits, and then, you know, doing Zooms in the morning and at the end of the day, and it was just a really, you know, kind of a manic time. But it really led to, you know, once the restaurant brand happened, things kind of quieted down. Everybody just went off in their own corners, and I was like, wait a minute, we all thought, like, there's so much we could fix if we stayed on this. So we've just, you know, I joined the board because I stayed active, and have no plans of backing down now.
Good for you. Sarah, I saw you nodding through both Caroline and Cheetie's responses. It must have been terrifying for you. I mean, you're still a fairly new, you know, restaurant owner and the chef. You know, Monteverde was, what, about 5 years old during the pandemic. What was it like for you, and what drew you to IRC?
Well, the pandemic was something that no one could prepare you ever. And as Cheetie said, you know, we were there to cook food and create an experience, and then all of a sudden that wasn't possible. And I worked with people that worked with us from my previous job at Spiaggia, and like these people that I know that need support, and it was terrifying, and I didn't know what to do. I will say that there's like definite PTSD going back to that mental headspace, because it was a time where I don't know, you tried hard and it seemed like it didn't matter. It seemed like it was something else happening, and I never wanted to be in a position to try to convince people that it was safe to work or safe to eat in your space. That was a huge responsibility that I don't think any of us wanted to take on, and yet people were looking to us to make that call. And how, you know, I'm not a doctor, so it was one of those things that felt like it didn't matter which way you went. You were going to disappoint somebody. And the one thing about chefs and restaurateurs is we don't like to disappoint anyone at all. We will go through so many challenges just to support someone and to make them happy. And so what's so crucial about the IRC is that we don't feel alone anymore. Up until this moment, there wasn't a group that could come together that could support the independent restaurateurs. And when we say that, we mean versus the larger chain-style restaurant corporations that do have a seat at the table in the city government, in the state, and in federal representation. And so what the IRC does is I like to say Erica, who's the founder, and she says, well, we're small and scrappy, and I love that because I think that's what independent restaurateurs are, and to be nimble and to be able to get in and make the meetings and meet the right people. And they take this approach by picking a few topics that are really important that you can accomplish. And that's what I think feels great, is that when you can accomplish a few things. And one big thing is childcare for restaurant workers. I mean, if we could accomplish that, think about what could happen. And so it makes us feel like it's not lost, and that we're able to really make a change for the future restaurateurs, for the future chefs. We all were given a system that was semi-broken at some point, and we need to be able to have support and change. You know, I think so many of us were just taught to put your head down and work. And now we have to put our head up and fight. And that's the difference.
That's great. Stella, you are our newest restaurateur. You have not been in the trenches for years, like some of the folks on this stage. You opened your restaurant after the pandemic, so IRC was there waiting for you to find it and be part of it. What led you as a new restaurateur to the organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think just seeing, before I'd even heard about what the work that the IRC was doing and heard about its existence, there were things that I started noticing as a restaurant owner that weren't working and that were very confusing to me. For example, I talked about service charges. We had a 20% service charge. It turns out service charges are, you as an employer, you have to pay employer taxes on top of service charges as though they were regular wage, but you don't have to do that with tips. So our values alignment drove us to have a service charge because one of the biggest pain points in this industry is employees not being able to have a consistent wage in the service industry, and we wanted to correct for that. And having a service charge really helped with more wage stability, but we were paying for it as restaurant owners, as a restaurant. And when you just do tips and choose not to do that, it's not extra. So I then heard that the IRC is working on a bill called the Service Charge Tax Fairness Act that would look to level the playing field, that would look to remove the employer taxes up to a certain amount on the service charge and make that a more viable path. So I think I just started seeing all of this policy that was happening around me that was in the works and realized that the IRC was behind all of it and really was motivated to get involved because, as everyone here has said, just showing up really makes a huge difference and helps actually enable policy that works for us.
Yeah.
So that's been huge.
And having that community. I mean, everybody knows if you have a restaurant or really any kind of business, just how lonely it can be. Like you can have 1 million friends, 1 million people in your restaurants or whatever businesses, yet somehow at the end of the day, you still feel like you're in it by yourself. So I'm glad that you have this community around you. Yeah. Okay, Cheetie, can you tell us about a key initiative the IRC is working on right now that could benefit everyone in this room?
Well, you know, if there was one answer that we could all use to solve restaurants, that would be super easy and amazing, but there is no silver bullet. So we actually have a bunch of bills that we're supporting, and actually the thing about the IRC is that we're helping write the legislation.
Wow.
And
Do you, not to interrupt you, do you want to talk about childcare? Because I feel like I know you touched on that,
yeah,
but
that's a
so
really
important.
big one. There's actually 4 or 5 tax incentives that already exist for companies to provide childcare, but they're not written by even small business owners, definitely not by restaurant owners. And so it's just like a little bit of modification. And there's actually a lot of movement on this, on the state levels and on the federal level. Nobody wants to talk about it in certain political climates, but it's a real thing. I mean, everything from big companies being able to build a facility. Well, no small restaurant is going to be able to do that. But when you think about when restaurant workers need childcare, a lot of it is second shift, and most people that have traditional jobs, 9-to-5 jobs, they don't need that. So I think it would be a win-win for a childcare facility to be able to have more hours, and if there was a tax incentive that employers could use. I mean, literally 4 days ago, one of my dishwashers was like, I don't know if I can work on Wednesday and Thursday nights because I don't have childcare. Her husband just left her. I mean, these are real issues that we've never really been able to sit at a table. But I tell you, Chili's and Golden Corral and all of these big companies do have very powerful deep pockets that influence policy. And I think if, you know, we get together, the service charge thing, it's options. These are options. We're all independent, we're not alone, yet we all have individual math, and we all need the ability to decide the best labor model, the best operating model for our individual businesses, and collectively, all of this legislation that we're working on, service charge, you know, business interruption insurance, oh my God, that is so broken, and as climate change is affecting every community, at some point, we're gonna have fires and floods. You know, when it comes down to it, you realize after the disaster that you don't have coverage, it's devastating upon devastation. So just to name a couple delivery fees, if you're a restaurant that delivers, sometimes fees are up to 30% go to DoorDash. You pay as a consumer, but we pay as a business to be able to do that. All of these things were just written by people who are not us, and we need a seat at that table, and we have one now.
That's great. Caroline, a lot of nodding over there. What is something, Caroline, you wish everyone in the room knew about restaurants?
There's so much. I mean, I think a lot of it's coming to light right now, and I'm not sure how many people in this audience are actually restaurateurs, but the one thing we were kind of talking about this earlier is that during the pandemic, the illusion and the curtain got pulled back for restaurants, and the public could see exactly what restaurants go through, how expensive it is to operate a restaurant, and how thin our margins are. I mean, truly thin. Right now, you know, 95 to 97 cents of every dollar that comes into a restaurant's door goes right back out, usually into the local economy, especially if you're you know, using local farming. But in the first, you know, the minute it comes in, it goes out, and it's incredibly expensive. And we're under so much pressure continually. I mean, rent increases are crazy. The insurance situation is out of control. I mean, our workers' compensation insurance is unbelievable. You would not, you see these numbers and think, how can I actually turn a profit? And a lot of restaurants, no matter how busy they are, they might be packed, are still probably not even making that much money if they're profiting. And I think the public particularly is not sensitive to that, and I think we're constantly, I think one big thing is that none of us are really charging what we should be charging. I think the public, we're very dependent on public perception versus the reality of costs. And so we're under a lot of pressure, and I think, you know, having that sort of understanding from the public and from all these different industries we work with would be enormous, because we are all small. A lot of us are very small operators. We're not huge corporations. And just like with, I mean, the beauty of the IRC is that we do have a voice at the table, because, you know, these big corporations, they've got, you know, California Restaurant Association, the National Restaurant Association, they've got these big lobbying entities behind them, and, you know, we're the small, scrappy group, but, you know, trying to get the word out to the public that, you know, the pressures on this industry are real, and I think we're, you know, you could go either way, but we're all having kind of a hard time. We love what we do, but it's hard.
All right, thank you for that. Our panelists will be around during snack break, so if you'd like to talk to them more about the IRC, please chat with them. You can also visit independentrestaurantcoalition.com to learn more and become a member. If you own a business that serves food, you should definitely check out the resources and information on the website. I just want to thank the four of you so much. It's been so nice getting to know you, Stella, and thank you for everything you do.